so that when we actually meet, we don't really get along because of that what has been ingrained in our minds. As far as the culture, there's definitely an advantage to being a black person when it comes to culture, because around the world, in a way, it's like, for example, no matter where we went, from slavery, Brazilian culture, is African culture. Afro-Brazilians very much held on to so many of their African traditions. Even though when we see Brazil, we see all these white faces on it, is not white culture. Capoeira, Carnival, Samba, all that stuff is from Africa. And Brazil, it hired a lot of Europeans to move there in 1888. I think that's after slavery was, abolished. It was 4 million Europeans were hired to move there, and they moved to the south, and that's where a lot of the Germans and Italians and Polish people are, and they have most of the wealth in Brazil. And we put their faces on it, even though it's our culture that's being celebrated, So that's kind of annoying, but I think it's cool the way, no matter where our culture goes, it kind of manifests itself in the country. And African Americans in particular kind of created their own culture, their own ethnic group of, when they were slaves. If massa wasn't feeding them, they created their own food called soul food. Hip hop being invented in 1977 in, South Bronx, and just this natural way of being, that's kind of the way our culture is. And I thought it was interesting because this dancer shared with The Grapevine, which is a black panel of speakers on YouTube. She shared how she was studying African dance and she saw them doing the dab, and it was just kind of like our ancestors are really amongst us, really, kind of bringing back the old and, encouraging us to do it even today. Like, people are dabbing and twerking, and those are African, African dances. So the last question is disadvantages. I think I did that. Oh, disadvantages of culture? I guess it's not cultural appropriation. I guess is a very big disadvantage. Not being, like I said, white Brazilian faces go on all these African culture of Brazil, and it's like not really being given credit for your own culture. So the last question is, how do other people perceive you because of these identifiers? And what impression management techniques do you use to either confirm or combat how others may perceive you? Why? The unfortunate thing I mentioned is the sunken place, and sometimes it's like the black person's way of behaving themselves. And it's unfortunate, but it's almost like a survival technique. So I don't want people to put me in a box of not being educated or whatever people may think of black women. I also don't want people to think that I'm too strong to need a shoulder to lean on, because people assume that black women, especially dark-skinned black women, don't need help in any way. And it's like, dang it, I don't want to be, not seen as a human, Management techniques is just, I'm a part of Women of Color group at my college, and being there, talking with other women of color really helps. I'm a part of various social media groups, like I said earlier, and like I said, 2018, I'm not saying we're there yet, but it's like, it's different, especially for the dark-skinned black woman. We're gonna keep flourishing, and you guys are gonna see a lot more of us. So, get ready, hold on to your securities, because we're coming. Let me stop. Okay. Anyways, thank you. This is my project for speech interpersonal communications. Out.